My name is Karen Ramel. I apologize for my voice. I got a severe strain of the flu, diagnosed January 3rd, and my voice just hasn't gotten better yet. But today we are going to do a quick demo of a recent sock design, demonstrating the ribber and showing the selvage that I saw on Autoknitter vintage manual. We're going to start with sock number 1, which I've done already. All right, so this is the sock newly off the machine in this lovely yarn. It still has my cast on bonnet attached with some blue scrap yarn. So what this features is the 72 needle cylinder with the Ravel cord with this ribbed special E-Wrap picot. Now, selvage as a word, as I understand it, is simply a technique to protect or lock in those first couple rows. So when you take the scrap or the Ravel yellow cord off, it doesn't drop a stitch, which is just gorgeous. So by playing with a certain sequence of needles, instead of doing all of them raised, you see perhaps here, it's a little bit hard to see. I'll move my yarn carrier slightly without advancing it. So this is my 3 o'clock position. This is my 9 o'clock position, just for orientation. My belly button-ish is pointing at 6 o'clock, and this is 12 o'clock over here. So that's basically how I've laid it out. I've already marked my cylinder, which is what I suggest before you even try a sock, because it's a little bit easier. Make sure your counting's correct. All right, so that's how this is set up. You can see this is my scrap, that there are spaces and then there are stitches, spaces and stitches, no big deal. Basically, from my 3 o'clock position, which I marked here, my first slot is a cylinder slot that best aligns with my ribber. So for my setup, my first slot after 3 is always going to be a ribber needle. You don't see it yet, but you will later, don't worry. So it's an empty slot, 3 cylinder needles, an empty slot, 3 cylinder needles, etc. all the way around. I want to point out that if you find a combination that you prefer, for example, 2 in 1 or whatever, and it doesn't mathematically work out on your cylinder, you can fudge it. No one will really know. So this, of course, 3 in 1 works evenly on a 72. And if you are interested, there are pages out of vintage manuals and also on my webpage which break down which cylinder, what ribber, what combinations mathematically work out. I'm not a mathematical person, so other than sneaking a peek at that little list, which I am now looking at, you can't see off screen, for a 72 with a 36 ribber dial, it's usually 1 by 1 works fine, 1 by 2, 1 by 3, and 1 by 5. So all that really means is ribber to cylinder. That mathematically breaks down. I've had people say, oh no, I can't do this. Yeah, you can. Believe me. Anyways, so I have cast on with my machine in this needle format where I start, like I said, empty slot, 3 cylinder needles all the way around. It's cast on. We're ready. Underneath my machine, I have my buckle that's hanging there. It's attached with my stem weight, which I have a total of 3 weights on. All right, so let's look back at the sock. I just pulled it off the machine quite literally. I cut it there. Try to add more scrap rows if you're going to cut it. Just gives you more peace of mind later when you close the toe. However you close your toe, on the outside, on the knit side, or on the purl side, which I prefer, it's easier. I always, even as someone who's done a billion socks, put my stitch markers. We will go over that later on the machine. So I know which is the kind of the crease of the toe. Makes it easier. This sock features what's called a deeper heel. And what a deeper heel can mean is any number of extra needles used in your heel instead of just starting your heel as 3 in 9 position. So for example, a regular heel, when it's that time, you'd have your yarn carrier at 6 and you would raise all these back needles directly at these halfway marks and then you would work down, and then you'd work back up. And that would be your heel or your toe. What we're doing here is we're doing a deep heel. My voice is crummy. So what we're planning to do today is we are going to add 1, 2, 3, 4 needles extra on each side. And what that means, instead of raising that first needle after those half marks, we're going to raise the 5th needle. And all that really means at this point is that's what I'm doing, and I'll explain it as we get closer, okay? These are just features of this particular sock. Now, almost any sock you make, you can break it into segments of what a sock is and change anything you want, all right? So today you see a sock that I did with this type of selvage, which is an E-Wrap. You can't fully see, but you'll see in the demo. I added that Ravel cord. You don't have to. It just makes it easier to separate. And in this setup, I did the 3 cylinder needles, 1 ribber needle. That's how it shows up once we finish the sock. You don't have to use your ribber, but for this to work as you see it here, this kind of needs the ribber. You could do different ways of doing it, certainly, but this is how we're doing today's pattern. When you do this, after you do your selvage, we're going to work a 40 rows, which is from here to right to here. And then we're going to remove all the ribber needles from the section that'll be the deeper heel, which is the halfway point plus those 4 needles. Same on the other side. We call this pre-heel, just this area above your heel. It's not that hard. It's kind of a funny, boring name. Then we did a heel, and then we put everything back together, and we continue the foot with just the ribber doing its ribbing on top. Now, however you choose to make your own socks, oh, and then don't forget the toe, which is totally awesome. However you choose to do your own socks, it's your way. That means there's no wrong way. If you like how you make your socks, with or without a ribber, with or without mock rib, then that's how you do it. Why not? Okay. So I'm not telling you how to, I'm just telling you how I like to do mine. All right. So let's get together here. I left the scrap on my sock because I wanted to show you how easy with a Ravel cord it is to separate the stuff that you did before and the stuff you want to keep. All right. So basically, well, here is everything. Now, the good thing about using contrasting colors is you can easily see what's what. So with this is just a type of cotton yarn fiber, like doily thread. It's just yellow, easy to see. And it's something that I use over and over and over and over until it's totally trashed. And I should undo this knot later, but not while you're watching. Don't worry. All right, so this is extra long because I like to reuse it. And if the edges get all bungled, I just cut it. So the awesome benefit with this type of E-Wrap cast on using this stitch combination is it's kind of lacy. So it's very easy to pull out. So I will show you how easy it is to separate, okay? I'm just going to pull. It's getting tight. It better be easy if I'm going to do it on screen, right? All right, pulling, pulling, pulling. It's off. Yay. And then we look at it and we just, there you are, done. And now what I like to do, because I keep extra cast on bonnets, is when I cast on next, I will just, where's the tail? It's there somewhere. I will just pull on that yarn tail and just use it right on the machine from this. So I don't have to undo it. But I do reuse most of my fiber that I use for scrap. So this is what this looks like. And it's just gorgeous. And it's, whoops, I'm losing my boyfriend's homework. No one tell him. It just creates this lovely picot. I did not design this. I have seen versions of it online, and then I looked through some old manuals, and on page 46 of an Autoknitter vintage manual, it talks about scallop, selvage, and something called Vandyke, and it talks about doing a couple rows with the machine set up as I have, adding the ribber as I'll show you, and it just creates this. So these down parts, these are when we first add the ribber needle, and it holds 3 bars of yarn. You'll see, we'll describe it, okay? It makes more sense in a minute. But isn't that just gorgeous? Just gorgeous. So I saw it, I'm like, that would be beautiful on my leg as a tall sock. But I feel Wouldn't it be even more gorgeous as a fold-over sock? I call it something like that, fold-over cuff. That's just gorgeous. And the nicer the yarn you use, the more you'll love it, because it'll feel good on your foot. Now, in case your question is, what the heck yarn is this? I pulled the label, Lana Grossa. Apologies again for my voice. It's a bit hoopered right now. This is something I've got in my stash some time ago. And it's quite beautiful. And there we go. If for whatever reason you want to see the row counts, the project number that I'm doing, that I followed on my Ravelry account, which is my first and last name, Karen Ramel, R-A-M-E-L. It's sock number 220. But yeah, so that's the color there. Isn't it just pretty? Anyways, we'll get going. So that's what it looks like. And for me to finish this sock, all I would do is I'd turn it inside out because I find that's easier. And I would Kitchener it close. It doesn't take much time. I do a bunch of them in front of the TV. The machine, we're back, we're cast on. And that's pretty much it. And I took the scrap and I cut it. It's at the last stitch before 3 o'clock, the cylinder needle there. The plan here is to start with the Ravel cord, which is that yellow cord that I just took out that I can now reuse. I've had people ask, how long of a piece of cord? Well, you're reusing it, so a bit longer, but not so long that it's unmanageable. I mean, it's not an expensive thing. It's just anything you choose to use that kind of just pulls out easily. It's not fishing line. You could use fishing line. I have other stuff like that. I like to use stuff that is a similar diameter as sock yarn-ish. It's kind of like that. But anyways, so let's feed it through the topper. That's above the screen that you can't see. And so I'm just going to put it through the top just so it feeds evenly. I only have 2 hands, so whatever holds it easier. Here it comes. Here we go. And so the idea here is a Ravel cord is usually only used 1 complete row. So I will start and I'll knit all the way around at one point, and then I'll end here, and then I will move the Ravel cord out of the way, okay? So that's how it's used. It's very easy. So with this, we're going to start with this first cylinder needle, which is the 2nd cylinder slot. And we're just going to thread our yarn carrier. Now, whenever you're doing any kind of machine work on the machine, it's very important you don't have too much slack on your yarn feed. So I don't have any weight on the Ravel cord, and it's just this piece. What my preference is to use quite often with anything that needs to be clipped, or my preference is I use these 3.5-inch hemostats. With flatbed knitting, people use wash clips. My word doesn't work. My brain doesn't work right now. They used, the laundry clips, but I like this better. It's short enough that when I clip it and drop it, it lands right inside the cylinder. I won't use it here, but I'll use it a bit later. So I just wanted to say that. But what I am going to do off screen is I'm going to clip the end of the tail of my scrap yarn. You heard it land on the table. That way there'll be some weight on it once I start working with it. So I'm going to work from here at 3 o'clock, and I'm going to go all the way around and stop over here. And there's a reason. Everything I do has a reason. So I'm going to slightly advance it. Make sure the yarn path, the fiber is going right into the needles. The latches are all open. Here we go. Bada bing. See, isn't that nice trick? Because there's that clip on the other tail, it's totally just sitting there. It's being nice. All right, so now we're stopped here, and there's a reason why we're stopped here. There we go. At this point, we're going to set up now for the E-Wrap. And anything you do on the machine, you kind of do stuff in advance for the next step. So this next step is raising any needle we can from the 3 o'clock position over here, okay? So you can either use your stitch tool, or you can use your crescent. It's a very useful fingernail saving, skin puncture saving tool. Just raise, raise, raise. There we go. Don't worry about the latches. I'm just being silly. They're not working right now. They don't have to be open there. All right, good. And so now that we're here, we've raised all of these needles. Now we're going to finish the row and stop at 12, which is this green one, because green's a great color. Now, because my Ravel cord might run away on the other end, I'm just going to hold it that you can't see, just so you know what's going on. And I'm just going to advance it to finish this first row. There we go. See, it drops, so that was good. And now we're going to take the Ravel cord and say thank you very much for your service, drop you in the middle, and ignore you. Sorry. Perfect. So now the machine is ready for the next step, which is to finish raising the other needles for E-Wrap. You will love this. I'm sure you've seen it elsewhere. I have generally stayed with my favorite style of socks. I'm kind of funny that way. I'm going to try something new. So let's try something new. Once again, you don't have to do this setup, this cylinder. Use any cylinder you want. You don't have to use the ribber, but in this style of start, this is what I'm using. And for this style of selvage, the ribber is needed to kind of finish the selvage edge. So try this if you have your ribber ready to go and you know how to use it. If you don't, feel free to message me, to email me, KarenRamel@yahoo.com. I help everyone. I do not charge for it. I like to help people when I'm not working, when my life's not too crazy, because that's who I am. I believe to pay it back. I like it as a new way of having a cuff, just something different. I mean, many people love the idea of a heel tab sock, and that's great if that's what you like. But, you know, there's just every flavor for every person out there, really. For me, I still work in dentistry, so when I'm working, even on the hottest darn days, and it's Vancouver, so it's not as hot in some areas of the world, even when your feet tend to sweat, with good pair of shoes, a wonderful pair of socks, it makes my day go better. So whatever works for you, that is the right answer for you. All right, so we're all E-Wrap set up now. Now we're ready to bring our yarn carrier from 12 to about 7. We're going to start here, the first space, the first cylinder needle after 3 o'clock, which is actually the second slot. It's not a big deal. We're going to take our sock yarn, which I've prepped on a cone. This happens to be a royal cone winder, however that was said. All right, good. It's beside my machine. I'm threading it up into the top part of my machine as I regularly would. And it's coming down the middle. Here it is. Just because you can't see everything, I'll tell you a bit. Now, one of my favorite things, as I mentioned a little bit before, is I prefer using these hemostat clips. You don't have to. You could hold it. Not me, man. Or you could even just use any kind of clip that's just easy to get in there and that'll hold it reliably. As somebody who's used different hemostats, much longer ones, at dental work, these ones are great. These short ones I bought off eBay, Amazon. They're awesome. Anyways, so what I'm doing here is I'm just going to secure the yarn tail, give myself some length, and secure it to the inside of my my scrap, somewhere on there, and drop it. It's awesome. And so what I like to do is I'm just going to make sure I have a bit more of a yarn tail than my sample one because it was so short. And all I'm going to do now is take it over to this first cylinder needle that's raised. I'm going to, so most CSMs, all of them that I've seen, except for the lamb machine, works in forward going in this direction, counterclockwise, okay? So I choose to wrap E-Wrap on each needle going in that same direction. So I'm going to take the yarn and I'm going to go to the first needle and I'm just going to go around the outside and go inside, then go to the next needle, okay? That's what I'm going to do here. It's a bit monotonous, I'm sorry, but that's all about setting stuff up. So we're going to try that here. I've been told that you can wrap in either direction, but I like to wrap in the direction the machine's going to run. So I'm just going to wrap it around. I'll try to keep my big fingers away from the screen so you can see. Now you don't want to go too tight. You don't want to strangle anything, and you don't want to be floppy. So it's just kind of a medium. Whoopa. There you go. Do as I say, not as I do. There we go. Whoopa. Oh my gosh. It always is so easy when you're not videoing. All right, so then I've got a couple there. So we'll just get this going. Yeah. And once I've done a few, the tail that I'm holding extra yarn in the middle of the machine won't need to be held. I just don't want to make that yarn tail too short. There we go. So, yeah, you can kind of see it. So basically the premise is you're just going to wrap, wrap, wrap every single needle that you have here. It's a bit fun. Whoops, there we go. One needle at a time. Don't skip any. A couple more. There we are. Last one loaded. Yay. Alrighty, good. So now I've done wrapping all of the raised needles. I did not overlap any that I wrapped before. That's why my finger's sitting here, my big finger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come from the inside, and I'm going to come between those last needles. I'm at the spot before 3 o'clock, and I'm just going to hold my yarn path where you see it here. And I'm going to come over to my yarn carrier, and thread it. Good. And because you can't see it, I'm going to use the heel spring. Just to help keep tension as I approach that first needle when we start to knit. We're not there yet. Great. Perfect. Awesome. All right, so now what we're going to do, we are at 6 or 7 on the cylinder. We want to lower now from here all the way over here. And when you do this, you don't want to push it down all the way. You want to almost go all the way. Oh, my voice sucks. If you push it down all the way, the latches will start to close. Now, you could do that if you want, but you want to knit with latches ready to knit. So I don't know if you can see it there. All the latches are open still because I'm just slightly pushing them down. Enough that they'll engage, but not so much as that the latch will flip up. So if you can imagine right now, your needles have that yellow Ravel cord, and it has that first row of sock yarn on it. So there's 2 stitches or 2 yarn bars on it. So there's a bit more tension on it than you normally would have. So you don't want to just push it right down to the bottom because that latch will say thank you, no thank you, and just close. All right, good. I think we can go as far as here. Nope, my cylinder is locking there with the cam, so that's okay.
These needles are all down.
So this first row now, we're going to approach the 3 o'clock position, the second slot after 3. We're going to very slowly, while watching, we're going to slowly use the yarn carrier and move it forward with our handle to about here, to about 11 o'clock, okay? All right, here we go. Because we have our heel spring, the tension's nice, there's no slack. We're going to approach it. Because I have this extra yarn here, I'm just going to pinch it. Can you see that? Yeah, you can, kind of. All right, and as you approach all these wrapped needles, that segment, that first row of project yarn might want to raise. So just make sure it stays down, that the latches are not being trapped by that prior row. Yep, okay, good. And we're just going to slowly go across. So a lot of tension there. You might hear it. There we go. There we go. And then you just kind of give it a reminder that it wants to stay down. Okay. And now we're going to lower the rest of these needles that are raised. And again, don't crazy push down. Just enough that the latches are still staying open and they're down. There we go. We'd call it the sweet spot, but you'll see when you do your own. There we go. There we go. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so now we're ready. We're going to do one complete row and then stop at 7 o'clock, okay? But we still haven't done this initial row, so we're going to continue going slow. There's a bit of tension here. So
This is what the needles ahead of the yarn carrier currently look like.
just be gentle. Never force your machine. If it's just totally jammed, something's going on, you got to fix it. You don't want to hurt anything. I'm just reminding that initial wrap to go down. It's not all like this, I promise. It's just there's a lot of tension in this initial load row. There we go.
One complete E-Wrap row worked.
And I'm going to go to 7 as I suggested, pushing down your prior work so everything is in the right space. A lot of tension here. There, we stopped at 7 o'clock. All right, so if we look here, we can see that, perhaps you can see, trust me, there are 3 bars of project yarn. 1, 2, 3. And that's from 3 o'clock to here's 3 bars, 3 rows, yay. And then of course we haven't finished that 3rd row, so there's 2 bars in this area, no big deal. 2, okay, yeah, great. So at this point, we're gonna do a couple things. First of all, if you did use your clip, remove that guy. Now this was my yarn tail that I started. I like to have an emergency length, shall we say, so that you can do anything you want. Now what you can do at this point is you could just simply leave it, and when the sock is off the machine, you can do something with the tail. But I'm a big believer of work tails into the machine as you go, because it's less work later. And that's my whole philosophy. Why not? So if you were looking really close here, you would see on yours when it's time that there's 2 bars. Because technically, this 3rd bar is your yarn tail. So to work your yarn tail in, what I like to do is, because my yarn carrier is over here still, I have full access, is I'm just kind of E-wrap to kind of lock in that yarn tail. I like to go maybe 2 or 3 needles on an E-wrap, even on a regular sock. When I have a yarn tail, I do this. There's no point in spanning more than that with this configuration, because there's a ribber needle that'll go later, and that's just more work. Don't want that. So at this point, because I want this to stay the tension it is, like it did those stitches, I'm going to bring back that hard-working hemostat. Now, you don't have to use this. This is just what I prefer, so I can control the tension of those stitches. Okay, now I can ignore that yarn tail. It's taken care of. All right, so now we're ready to add our ribber to the machine. And I don't know if you can see it, but right where my finger is, there's this green mark that I previously put, which says my first ribber slot is lined up to my first slot after 3 o'clock. So when I mentioned before that that's how my alignment is, that is the best first stitch of my ribber. So it will always be that first stitch on my alignment. And the alignment of all these kind of funny marks relies solely on my preference of where I put my marks. If you need help with cylinder marking or any of that stuff, please look on my website, csmlove.com. It's all free information. If you don't know how to mark whatever cylinder slot you have, email me, message me, I'll help you out, okay? No big deal. All right, so here we are. And what was that all about? Now we're ready to continue. So with this particular selvage, we are going to add our ribber needles in such a way as to pick up those bars we were talking about. So these prior rows that weren't knitted were creating bars. So what I like to do is I like to use stitch tool, use whatever works for you, and a ribber needle. And what I'm going to do is these unknitted, basically mock rib at this point, bars are going to be hung on your inserted ribber needles. All right. And a good trick to know is whenever you are going from a ribber needle to a cylinder needle, from the ribber to the cylinder, when you're transferring those stitches, it doesn't matter where you put the stitch on the cylinder needle. That's just how it works. Awesome. Easy. You will see. But when you're switching a cylinder stitch or any stitch on the cylinder to a ribber needle, in order for it to work correctly, you have to put it in a needle, a ribber needle, that isn't closed. Okay? You want to make sure that stitch does not sit behind it. You want that stitch to sit basically where my fingernail is. Okay? It's very straightforward. It's just how it works. So when you load any ribber needle, always put the stitch in here. You will see, okay? So let's do that here just for straightforward and clarity. Now what I like to do is I like to use my stitch tool and my ribber needle to help me load this, because there's a bit of tension here because it's 3 bars that we're hanging. So I'm going to actually use my ribber needle, that hook, and my stitch tool. And actually we might as well zoom in because I think we can. Yeah, woohoo, look at that. All right, so on the right side or first cylinder needle, I'm going to pull it out and let's have a look. We should have 3 bars. Of course, I see 2. Yeah, there's 3. One's on top of the other, just to confuse us. You see that? There's 3 there. 1, 2, 3. So with my stitch tool as an assist, we're going to just poke it down there, and I got to trap all 3 bars. There they are. They're all happy. We're going to grab our ribber needle, and we're going to go around and just grab those and just say, okay, we grabbed it, and now we want to put it in right, and then load it. Oh, look at that. I closed it. There we are. Okay, good. So now the ribber needle is in the slot. Am I poking the right one? Yeah, there we go. The ribber needle is open and it's holding those 3 bars. Okay, that first slot after 3 o'clock. First ribber needle. And we're going to do that all the way around as we load the ribber with our ribber needles. All right. I'll do it a couple times more because I kind of have to do it all the way around. You'll see. All right, good. And we'll just move you over my little tripod here. All right, so the next one, of course, is the 4th slot. And now you can use left or the right needle. Just because where I started, these are extra wrapped needles. It was just too much tension, so that's why. I mean, just to be confusing. Either side of the ribber slot, we can just pull out. Let's have a look. I see 1, 2, 3. I see my Ravel cord. It's saying hello, hello. And we're just going to grab those 3 bars. Yep, I see it. You see it. Here we go. We're loaded. We're open latch. Everybody's happy. Let's continue. We're going to continue all the way around. Am I still on screen? Oh, good. Make sure you're grabbing all 3. If you grab 2, you won't be happy later because it won't be happy with you. Here we go. It's actually not that difficult. It's kind of a 2-handed thing. It's easier if you don't pull on your finger with it because it's metal and it's tiny and it kind of hurts if you pull on little metal bits. So I've held those 3 bars, load the needle, place it. Are we still on screen? Yay. All right. All right. So if you have a setup that allows you to work around your machine, it can be easier, but it's not necessary. But it is important that you use bright lights because regardless of your age, being able to see is a good thing. There we go. Now we haven't started knitting any of the ribber stitches we've placed the ribber needles in yet. So we can now bring, so you can see, we can bring the yarn carrier where it's still parked after we place the ribber on the machine. We can bring it forward. It's still only cylinder stitches here. There we go. And we're just going to stop there because we now have access to the rest of it here. All right, so continue. All your latches are open. I got split in half. Okay. Here we go. Bazinga. Bazinga. And do not worry if it isn't, what I do here. Look at that. I just said 4 slots. I boo-booed. So I need 3 rubber slots between. And if I just pushed it back, it would be behind the latch and that would drop it when we're knitting. So here's how you fix that. I will not want to drop any of those bars, although they wouldn't go anywhere at this point. If it was a live stitch, that wouldn't be fun. So I'm just going to, what I like to refer to as the handshake method when we're transferring an actual stitch is where, excuse me, I'm going to temporarily use my unused cylinder needle in my left hand, and I'm going to keep tension on it, tug of war, here's tug of war, and I'm going to move that 3 bars from the wrong side of the latch to the correct side. So to do that, it's a 2-step procedure, okay? You've seen this before. I have it here, and I'm just going to slide it with tension to the cylinder needle. There you are. Thank you, cylinder needle. Now behind the cylinder needle latch that you see, and we're going to come back. Come on, come back. It's a lot of tension. Here we go. Nice. And now those 3 bars are sitting in the correct area of that needle, which if we'd done it right to begin with, we wouldn't have had to do. No one has to see it. Well, I guess I'm recording, so everybody sees it. Anyways, we're all human. All right, so let's keep going. 3 bars. And let's load that guy. Bah humbug. Open. Thank you. 3 rubber slots between. All right. So now we don't have a lot of room to work that you can't see. Here we go. We don't have a lot of room left here. And let's make life easier. So now we're going to advance. So right now, we are just before, look at that. You can't even see where I'm referring. We're going to advance the yarn carrier from the 3 o'clock position. And we're going to go and start using the rubber needles that we loaded, okay? So before now, you would have confirmed that your machine, your setup, when you are doing this, that your tappet, if you have the in-out switch, if you have a really old machine, you may not. If you have a tappet switch and it has an in-out, make sure it's in work because it won't use the rubber needles if it's not in work. The Autoknitter from Dave Lord is a modern version of a Laguerre. On this tappet, you see in out. On this tappet, in work is in. On your Autoknitter, if you have one, in work is actually reversed. So just look at what yours says, okay? Know your machine. Anyways, this first rubber needle you can't quite see has got 3 bars on it, meaning it's carrying a load. So there's a lot of tension there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to advance the yarn carrier from where it is, where my fingers are dancing, all the way over here. And again, this is a slow process just because we have latches that aren't used to carrying 3 bars of yarn. So we are just going to continue forward. Because there's more yarn on a needle right now than it normally has, I like to just remind the underside of my machine that's holding the bonnet to pull down just a little bit, just to make sure the prior knitting is actually staying down because this is very tight tension here. So we're going to stop, and it beautifully knitted and did its rubber use stitch there. And it's great. So we are going to continue here with adding the rubber needles on the second part. These are exactly everything we've done so far. So without zooming in, let's get this part done, shall we? Always takes so much longer when you talk a lot more. Sorry. All right, so let's pull out that needle again as we've done many times before. 3 bars, loaded the needle, placed the needle. There will be a bit more tension there when we get there. That's these ones here, by the way. But maybe it doesn't apply yet. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? There we go. So what you can see here is that extra yarn tail. The yarn tail came from here, and it E-wrapped, sit inside the cylinder with a clip so it stays nice and firm and out of the way. So later, off the machine, I can just snip it right there. And that yarn tail will go away, and I don't have to do any extra work. other than use my scissors. I can do that. That's easy. All right, so let's grab these last 3 bars, dance with the rubber needle, have a glass of wine later, you know, whatever works. And then we'll come out of our zoom and back up the tripod.
All right, so now with all the rubber needles, everything transferred, we want to finish doing this first ribbed row.
So again, do not go that fast. Use your left hand underneath. Make sure that your bonnet is able to be pulled down just a tiny bit, just to kind of help that tension, because there's a lot more stuff going on right now on those rubber needles than it's used to. All right, so this is first rubber row. I'm stopping at 3 o'clock. Perfect. First row done. So at this point, we would take the heel spring off, because we no longer need it to be super awesome on that super edge. However, if you're someone who likes a higher gauge, a tighter knit, a more firm fabric, even just a tiny bit, then you could leave the heel spring on for the whole sock, but I will not. All right, so we have just finished the selvage, this very top row, this very, very, very top row, burgundy part. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do 40 rows in this design from here to here, 40 rows as it is set up right now. And then the next step, always important to know where you need to stop your yarn carrier, is to take the rubber needles out. Oh, it's actually reversed. To take the ribbers out for this segment here. This is called the pre-heel. This will have no rubber needles, but this still has rubber needles on top of the foot. Okay? So that prepares you to work that heel later. So all you need to do is you just need to know in advance where to stop so you can do your next step. So we know 40 rows. So where we are right now, we're going to take the yarn row counter you can't see, and I'm going to zero it out. There we are, 0, because I can count with my brain, but my row counter works better than my brain. I am doing 40 rows, and then I'm going to stop where I am right now. And there's a reason for that too. All right, so here we go. That first row should be fine. I just want to make sure I'm looking and I see that the stitches aren't fully down. It's because of all that extra tension. So we're just going to slowly go around, make sure. You can probably hear it. It's kind of angry that it's been working so hard. It's kind of like tick, 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 tick. So there's row 1 there. Now everything else should be better. It's because now it's just 1 stitch on each needle and everything's happy. So we're going to look at the row counter and we are going to do our rows. Here we go. $39. Last row, stop where I was at 3 o'clock. And the reason why I stop here is because we'll refer back to the machine here. You can see 9 o'clock here. This is the 9 o'clock position. This is 12 of a clock. And this is 3. Okay? Can't really see 3, but don't worry. 3 is busy and 3 hasn't moved. So we are doing a recipe here. It's a deep heel. And so what that means, a regular heel might start at the first cylinder needle after 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And that would technically be this one I'm playing with right here. But we're doing a deep heel. And we're setting up the pre-heel. And you're like, oh my God, you're doing it way in advance. Yeah, and there's a reason. Okay? We're doing the pre-heel setup. The pre-heel has the same style of needles as the heel will. So this is why we're worrying about this now. We are going to add 4 cylinder needles to the heel. Yes, I said that right. So in order to do that, at this stage, what we'll do is we'll put the cylinder spring on the rest, because we're going to be working with the needles. We need to transfer all of the rubber needles in this segment, and it makes it a little bit easier if you just kind of give it a push, pull out a cylinder needle so you can easily get to the cylinder spring. Gently lay it there. Try not to pull at any one point of the cylinder spring too hard. You don't want to damage it. It's just a metal coil. I mean, you damage it, then you have to replace it sooner. So at this point, we are setting up, we're changing the rubber needles to cylinder needles. So counting again, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this needle here, that's way behind the half point normally, this one needs to be a cylinder needle. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this rubber needle and we're going to switch it to a cylinder needle. Now we go from rubber to cylinder. It doesn't matter where the stitch is as long as it's on the needle. So it's so much easier. So handshake method, tug of war. There, cylinder needle is loaded and we'll just drop it in the cylinder. Perfect. All right, so then I can see that any of those needles that will be involved with a deeper heel later, they'll be ready to be added to your heel because none of them are rubber needles. Awesome. Now we're going to continue switching all the rubber needles that you see here on off the screen from here to the 4 needles behind, 5 needles behind on this side too. So let's do a couple more real close for anybody that's like, I didn't see that. Replay that. I am grabbing a cylinder needle with my left hand. I'm zoomed in. Yeah, there you go. And then you can see this is that rubber needle here. I'll just move that so you can see a bit better. And I just want to move that from one needle to the other. Tug of war. There you go. Beautiful. Easy. In you go. Push you down. Oh, look at that. It's trying to do it sideways. It's so easy. I did it sideways. No, don't do that. There you go. And we're just going to continue because generally when we do a pre-heel, we do a pre-heel and a heel without any rubber needles. Now, if it's your preference, you don't have to swap them all right now. What you could do, some people do, is they do a graduated pre-heel. And what that really translates to is instead of doing en masse, switch over to non-rubber, you can maybe do a few, do a row or two, do a few more, do a couple more rows, etc. And it's a way of making that back pre-heel, instead of a block, you make it like a V. But you don't have to. It's whatever you prefer. It's just a design element. All right, transfer, transfer, transfer. Let's zoom out so you don't have to look at my cuticles. There you go. More monotonous, sorry. Come on, zoom here. There we go. Perfect. All right, and we can advance it. In case you don't know, and you probably do, whenever we do a transfer row, we don't necessarily count that as part of the row count. As long as you do the same, that's all what making identical socks are. That also means that your yarn source has the same tension, which is one of the reasons why I recommend using a cone winder over a ball winder. But if you have success with your setup and you use some other way of winding your yarn, that's all that matters. Let's continue here. We're about the 5 o'clock position on my cylinder. I'm making sure the latches are open. Less nightmare later if anything drops. Okay, good. Okay, so this is 3 o'clock, so let's keep going. Transfer, transfer, transfer. Now, all of my cylinder and rubber needles are kept in a plastic container. If you choose to use a metal one, hey, that's your choice. I like to use these divided Systema ones. But you use any container that works for you. I like 2 together. Awesome. And I drop oil in them to kind of keep them happy, because if you don't oil them, why would they want to work for you? I don't know. I said that wrong. You get it. All right, so here's we're at the 3 o'clock position. Bobbing. There we go. Here we go. 3 o'clock position, and you can see this is a rubber needle. And then within the first 5 needles, this is a rubber needle there too. So these last 2 are the ones that we need to transfer before we get to the next stage, which is the pre-heel. Make sure your latches are open. Good. And we are done. Whoa, I almost boobered that one. All right. We are now done. Everybody's set up, ready for the next segment, which is the pre-heel. Now, if it's your way of counting rows to finish the row at 3 o'clock and then set your yarn counter, or your row counter, then do that. What I like to do is I like to start my row counter from where I am. And as long as I always do what I always do, then there will be no discrepancy in size, etc. So at this point, for me, and the way I do it, make sure my latches are open, I'm going to zero out my row counter because I need to do 10 rows of my pre-heel. At that point, I will stop 10 rows at 6 o'clock. And there's a reason for that too. All right, so let's do it. Latches are all open, 10 rows. There we go, 10 rows. Great. So at this point, you would set up to do your heel by the steps you'd normally do. I have a certain way I like to do it, so I just want to cover both ways. So if you're not the person who does it my way, you know what to do at this point. So at this point, you'd be like, okay, my yarn carrier is at 6 o'clock. At this point, I need to kind of disengage my ribber by taking the drive pin out and by putting it in the off position. And then you could either play with this, or you could stick it wherever you have an extra spot for, or if you have a different style, which is the L shape, you can put it reverse and it would hang out there. And the deal is it wouldn't touch where it would push the tappet. And otherwise, doing all of this part means that this stays here while you're working on your heel. And what that means is it won't push any of those ribber needles back here. They're all kind of waiting, holding. They're not doing anything. So that's how you would leave your ribber on your machine if you choose to do that while you're doing your heel and your toe. I am not that person. And that's fine. Do what works for you. I am the person who likes to take the ribber off. So what I like to do with the ribber needles that are only right here in the machine is I need to be able to take it off without having any of those stitches have issues. So all I do is I take each ribber needle and I poke them into their corresponding empty cylinder slot upside down, and they kind of click into that heel cylinder spring that you might hear. Oh, Bob, now you're listening for it and I'm missing. There we go. There we go. Hang on one more time. There we go. And now I can easily remove it. And I do this for multiple reasons. One reason is I can see I didn't drop anything. Ha, yay. But it happens. Even if you have done all the right stuff, sometimes something just oops, and then you could fix it. I would prefer to fix it now versus fix it after because it's less noticeable because it'll have the same yarn tension if you do that. I should knock on wood. I haven't dropped anything here, so we're good. So at this point, some people choose, if they do this, to leave these upside down and kind of like butt out. Here you are, see? Butt out in the slot. But as my yarn carrier comes very close and I don't want it to hit that, I'm going to now do the next step that I do. Okay, so what I do, without moving anything on the left side where the yarn carrier is, I gently get access to the cylinder spring again, and I'm just going to hold it with my stitch tool and lay rubber needles on the inside. It's so fast. And it's holding those stitches without twisting anything. There we go, good. And now at this point, we would raise those needles that we need for the heel. So we are going to raise the 5th needle behind each of the halfway marks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the 5th one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the 5th one. And that's because we are doing, confirm your math, we are doing a deeper heel, which is in this scenario, plus 4 working needles, which is what that is there. 4 and 4. Trust me. Okie dokie. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, good. All right, good. And make sure any of these rubber needles are pushed down so you're not going to collide with them. All good. So at this point, if you haven't kept your heel spring engaged, put your heel spring on because you need that back and forth slack taken care of. So I've done that. And what I'm going to use now is use whatever pull down method you have to pull down on your heel or your toe as you make it. You can use your heel forks. Those are those fork things that there's 3, 1, 2, and 3. I prefer to use the modern version of the V-hook. And it's that which is made by Dave Lord of Chambord CSM. It's a V-hook, and it's super long, and it's made with this weight that you can add. I find I need to move it less. Probably shouldn't put that over there. There we go. I need to move it less. Then I would have to have the hassle of 3 things that I have to keep adjusting. So I'm just going to drop it in there. And the question is, how far down? Usually about there. It's just literally a fingernail length height right below. And the question also is, on your heel marks here, oh, look at that, it's crooked. Apply them about where your heel boundaries are. Okay, good enough, whatever. There. Anyways, now we haven't finished this last row before we start the heel. So that's the next step. There we are. So the other reason why I like to remove the ribber system from the machine is I like full access to what I see. So if I haven't made a boo-boo, yay, I can fix it. Didn't need to, yay. At this point, I have full access to the stitches. So if something misbehaves, I can easier fix it. But also, because when I make a heel or toe, I can do so faster and easier than relocating the pull-down weights I can't really see, just by touch or whatever. So in this scenario, whenever we do a heel, the first thing you do is you're always on the right when you start. On most machines, other than the lamb machine, this first one is kind of stuck. I can't pull it up because I haven't gone further enough back. So make sure you go kind of past 12 whenever you do each of these, okay? So first step of your heel is raise that first needle. The first action of each row is raise a needle. And then what I like to do, just to make it easy, and you'll see how easy it is on these first 3 needles, I always like to put my finger there just to kind of hold the tension. And then of the last 3 needles, I do the same. The other thing is if you haven't reset your machine by going past 12 to come back, I want you always to watch and see if the first needle is going up. If it's not going up, stop, return to sender, reset, and come back. Because if you haven't gone back far enough, you haven't reset your machine. The wave of a stitch kind of needle going up and then going down. Okay, you will see. So some people say, oh my goodness, what happened? I started my heel and this happened. Sometimes it's because if your yarn carrier isn't in the wrong alignment, it is because you haven't gone back far enough. That the stitch wave. It'll make more sense when you're doing it, that wave when you're knitting, okay? All right, anyways, let's continue. So that's what's happening. The needle's going up. I'm happy, yay. Latches are open. I'm gonna put my finger there at the last couple. Perfect. So first step was to raise this needle that we did on the right. So what we did on the right, we do on the left. So now we're gonna raise that first needle on the left. And all we're basically gonna do is do one, then do the other, and we're gonna continue until we're at our heel marks, which are there. So if you don't have marks already set up on your machine, mathematically correct would help, then do that before you do a heel. Because if you mathematically oopsed and it was like an extra couple over here on one, and you'll see it when you do this because everything is one, then the other, one, then the other, one, then the other. And then you'll get there and you'll be like, what did I do wrong? Oh no. And then you'll undo it and redo it and you'll find the same results and you'll be frustrated. Don't be frustrated. Just look at your numbers. You don't have to be math guru, not a math guru. You get it. All right. So we raised this left one. And what if we were like, oh my God, the mailman came and the door buzzed and whatever. And we are doing the decrease. That's what you do first with the heel. So when you're looking at it, you go, oh my gosh, did I raise that needle? I don't know, did I? Easy way to tell when you're on the decrease is to look at the stitch. Oh, can I do that? Whoa, where are you, buddy? Let's get this over there. Yeah, it's so easy to say that I can. All right, good. So this is the last needle knitted. I raised it, so I know I did raise it. But if it was down and it was the last stitch, you see that there? And I was like, oh my God, oh, I went to the left. Did I raise a needle before I came back? I look at this and this was knitted. So it worked, but it means it hasn't been raised for the next step to go the other way. All right, that's how easy it is. Watch that sucker. When you do it, it'll make more sense. Because when you first hear it, you're like, what? You just spoke another language to me? What? You will see, okay? That's the trick. Now you know the trick. Share the word. All right, so let's zoom out. Come on, zoom. You can do it. There we go. Love that color. Let's bring that a little bit more. Everybody can see what's going on. So we raised on the left. Let's come back. Let's hold those couple stitches. Let's hold those last couple stitches. Beautiful. So what do we do now? You know what? We raise one more needle. Oops, let's go back further. There we are. Repeat. Repeat. What we do on the right, we do on the left. And I remember when I first saw this, I saw videos, I was like, what? Oh my God, I have to write down each step. And they went so fast. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? That's what's happening. It's what you do on the right, always start on the right, you do on the left. Now, and that's this pattern, this heel. There are others that you do different combinations of things. Oh man, those confuse me. But I'll tackle them eventually. So every new row, we start by raising one and working over. And what I'm doing without needing to move my heel spring or my V-fork heel weights is I'm just holding down the stitches here. Oh wait, look, last one knitted. I didn't raise it. There we go. Because the only stitches that really will raise are the sideways ones. I haven't moved it yet. See how many rows I've done? A buttload. All right, I raised the stitch or the needle. Hold, work across, repeat on the left. So what you do on the right, you do on the left. Most of the time. Raised on the right, raise on the left. Now, because we're doing an extra 4 needles on either side, this part's going to take a bit longer than usual. But that's okay, because it's way nicer to do it on the machine than do it by hand. And yeah, it takes me this long to do a sock, but not really when I don't have to explain it or to try to keep it clear for you to see. So yeah, I can make socks much faster than this. Some people, the first question is always, how long did that take you? Well, that's fine, but it's not about how fast or slow. I didn't have to do any extra work to it, so it's certainly faster. But I do work faster than this, just so you know. What we do on the right, we do on the left. If you have to tell yourself that each time, then you know my secret. All right, right, left. Do you see I still haven't moved my V-hook, my heel weights? No fumbling. You just need to make sure that these dudes and these dudes are down. All right, we blabbered and we didn't know if we raised it, but I can see this last stitch, the last needle that's down, has been knitted because it's been obviously there's a stitch on it. So raise that guy. Whoops, I keep bumping my iPad. Later my video will be funny. Yep, okay. All right, so there we go. We keep going. It's a billion more needles to knit. And then raise the one on the left. Come back. Okay, now because this guy is way down there, why not just bring it up? I mean, I could. I will. There we go. And here we are. Last stitch knitted is not raised. Here we go. Here we go. Same, right, same, left. If you don't get it, break it up into parts. It makes sense. Raise one on the right, move, raise one on the left, come back. And I'm watching, although you can't tell, I am, honest. I'm watching what's happening to the stitches that are knitting. I'm making sure that the stitches knitted, aren't raising and stopping the latch from behaving. They are staying right against the cylinder, which is what my finger trick is doing, okay? All right, so I raised it, and I can come back. And in case you can't see it, I have 2 lower cylinder needles before my mark and 2 lower cylinder needles before my mark on the other side. So I've been keeping correct. What you do on the right, you do on the left, and you're fine. All right, let's continue, because holy goodness, blabbing's taking forever. That's okay. I don't want to be fast, so you can follow it easier. Last needle before the mark. Go to the left. Last needle before the hash mark. Come back. Perfect. We are now done the decrease. There are, on my 72 here, there are 12 needles. 6 and then the halfway mark, 6 o'clock, and then 6. That's what you're looking at. Okay, super easy. I'm on the right. Whenever you're done your decreases, you should be on the right. Because we started on the right, what we do on the right, we do on the left. So 1, 2, of course you're on the right. It makes more sense with time. Don't worry about that if it doesn't make sense now. All right. All right, so we're looking at a machine with a bunch of needles that are up. We're looking at some needles that are down. This heel is what I refer to, what others refer to as a no-wrap heel. Prior to this method, which was the first method shown to me, when they did the increase, you needed to do a redirection of the yarn path, kind of a wrap. Now, that's a recipe. You can do that way if you want, but what I like to do, the no wrap method. I believe it's also referred to as suicide heel, but I might be wrong. But from what I understand, I refer to it as a no wrap method because I don't need to redirect your yarn. Because the way it's working, it does the wrap for you. This will make more sense in a minute, okay? So we're on the increase. The first step is to lower the first raised needle on the right side of the hash. So we're going to do that. The yarn from the prior stitch is under that latch, and it's going on over to my yarn carrier.
Here's a quick image of what this first lowered needle looks like with the yarn path going to the last knitted needle on the left and the yarn going underneath the latch.
So, no wrap is I'm going to bring the yarn carrier across and knit. And what's going to happen is that yarn path, as you can imagine it, it's on that last knitted needle. The yarn path is under that dropped latch. It's under the latch. It's over. And when it comes back to knit, the yarn actually goes through the needle. So it's actually wrapping the latch.
Okay, so we've lowered this right needle and now we need to work it. We're going to work that row from the right to the left. I'm going to hold down any extra stitches and make sure that first needle among all of them have their latches stay open. We're going to travel to the left all the way to 12, and then I'm going to lower that left needle, and then I'm going to come back. Here we go, lowered and come back. Perfect, just helping it stay down. What we did on the first row again, we do this again, lower that right needle, lower the left needle. We are working each row between, lower the right needle, work over, hold it down, lower the left needle, work over. We're looking at our heel marks, lowering the right needle, working over, lower the left needle, work over. We're making sure all the stitches knit correctly, lower the right needle, work over, lower the left needle, again work over, finish that row, lower the right needle, working over, or lower the left needle, working over, lower the right needle, go over, lower the left, have a look, yes, everything's down, come back, lower another needle on the right, and lower another needle on the left. Perfect. Readjust as needed. Just going to make sure it's still holding down. Now lower the needle on the right. Work across. Lower the needle on the left. Work across. Again, on the right, we lower one, work across. Lower one on the left. What we do on the right, we do on the left. We want to make sure then lower the right, work across. Make sure all the stitches are knitting by being held down. Lower the one on the left, work across. We'll lower the one on the right, work across. Lower the one on the left, work across. Okay, I'm showing you there is the halfway mark and that there are 3 needles raised. So we have 3 more needles to ensure go down. So that's 1 on the right, we lowered, past the halfway mark. The 1 on the left, we lowered, past the halfway mark. Now we're on the second one after the halfway mark. Lowered and working across. The second one, work across. Now this should be the final mark after the halfway that we've just pushed down to work back on the right. And now we're going to final one on the left, push down to work, and we're going to stop at 7 o'clock. That's what I'm showing here. So stop. Perfect. So by stopping one complete row less than where we started, we do what's called an interlock stitch. So now let's push down all the back needles. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to return the ribber back to the machine. And to do that, we need to prep the ribber needles by turning them upside down. They fit nicely in the slots they correspond to. They click in the heel spring. It's quite nice. Just want to be able to get things out of the way so we can easily realign the ribber dial and the ribber setup. All right, all good. All needles are down, all latches are open. Back the setup goes. The inside of the fin is connecting on the inside of the cylinder and the tappets against the drive pin. You can see on the right the 2 green marks align. Okay, as part of the returning the ribber back to the machine, we are going to gently lift the cylinder spring, as you see mostly here, and just reorient all of the upside down needles just so that they aren't stuck in each slot. They are untucked. So now we're ready to ensure that the dial and our starter marks are aligned. So this is the other reason why we have the best aligned mark on your cylinder at 3 o'clock and your ribber dial. And that's what those green marks are on the right. I just wanted to make sure they're aligned. And what you want to do is just lay the ribber needles in the approximate alignment of the whole dial and transfer, as you can see here, each ribber needle back into its correct position so that the stitch is not behind the ribber needle. So handshake method to the right, handshake method to the left, and then load that stitch back within the ribber needle with each latch open. I know that was a little bit hard and a little bit fast. Sorry. We're going to do a couple more here, and now they're not zoomed in. So if you need to see that again, it's the same procedure anytime we're working with a ribber needle. Every stitch transferred back onto the ribber needle needs to be not behind the latch. So this is what we're doing here. Handshaking, a little bit of a tug of war, and just loading that stitch back within the needle. If you add your ribber needle back into your ribber dial with the latch closed and the stitch behind the latch, when you go to use it, it'll drop that stitch. So this part's actually very easy. It's just ensuring that the latch is correctly placed back on the ribber needle, making sure here all your latches are open. All right, so we're looking at our next step. Our next step is to reset our counter to 0 because we have finished the heel and now we're going to work the foot. The design of this foot has ribbing just on the top of the foot. So this is why this top part, the back part of the cylinder has ribber needles. We're going to work a foot of 60 rows. So in today's example, we are going to stop at 59. And the reason why we stop 1 row before our ideal finished number of foot rows is so we can transfer out the remaining ribber needles. So our next stop, we are stopping at a total of 59 rows at the 6 o'clock position to transfer the needles back to cylinder needles and take the ribber off the machine. So while this demo sock is featuring a 60 row foot to fit the size I make with it, it does not mean that your machine using your fiber and your settings is going to make a sock of the same size. That's a difference in gauge and can make a big difference between machine to machine by the factors I mentioned a moment ago. So you do need to do some homework and see how your machine works up. All right, so we've stopped at 6 o'clock. Now I'm pointing to where the first ribber needle is. Put your cylinder spring on the rest, let it do your work for you, and now you're going to transfer every remaining last few ribber needles from the ribber needle to the stitch to the cylinder needle. Very easy. And then just make sure it's placed back in its little slot. Okay, with the transfer of this last ribber needle stitch to a cylinder stitch, you return the cylinder spring back to the cylinder and you can take the ribber off the machine. So if there's any mistakes here, you can fix them. Otherwise, we need to do one final row. Here is row 60. We are stopped about 6 o'clock. We're going to use our crescent tool or anything pretty much to lift all the needles behind 3 to 12 to 9 o'clock. And now with all the needles lifted on the back, we can move the yarn carrier to about 12 o'clock. We add our downward weight, the V hook that we were using before, just bring it higher up into the sock from where it should still be hanging on the prior heel. Starting our toe, we raise this first needle on the right, we work the row, we raise that needle on the left. What we do on the right, we do on the left. Raise the second needle on the right, and do the same on the left, and work back. Raise the next needle on the right, and now we do the same on the left. The next needle on the right, work it, raise the left one, come back. And we are repeating this, right lifting, work, left lifting, work, and repeating back and forth. So for this toe, we are going to stop one needle before the hash marks, the boundaries of our toe. Whereas before, we worked right up to the mark. In this toe, we are working one row before. So we're starting to get close there. Continuing raising the needles until we are one needle away. Readjust your pull down weight as needed. I have been able to use my fingers and that reduces the number of times I need to move it. But here we go. We're almost there. Last needle on the right, we lift. Last needle on the left, we lift. All right, so now we are done our decrease. Now we're ready for the increase. So what we do here is we do something different. Okay, so we are doing a different start of an increase. At this point, we're going to lower the first raised needle on the right and lower the first raised needle on the left. And then we're going to work across. Make sure all latches are open. I'm just going to hold my fingers here at the needles. You don't have to do that. I'm just doing that to kind of show where that first bit there is on this path. All right, perfect. Now we lower the needle on the left and work back. That is the difference to everything so far. Now we start over and lower the needle on the right and work across. And then lower the needle on the left and work across. Hold down as much as you need. Now we continue doing a needle on the right and then a needle on the left until we are at our target area. So on the right we've done, and now on the left we've done. Coming back, you are going to get to the left hash mark a lot sooner than the right, and that's because of how we did what we did. So when you note you are getting close to your left hash mark, which is the 9 o'clock mark, before you get there, be aware of when that is going to be the last needle you lower, because then the step after that, we stop at 6 o'clock. So we continue lowering the right needle work, lowering the left needle work, lowering the right needle work, lowering the left needle work, lowering the right. Pretty much the same. And just watch as you get close to that 9 o'clock hash mark. There it is there. That's the 9 o'clock. This is our last needle that we drop. We did. We're going to stop at 6 o'clock so we can lower the final lowering of all the needles, putting them back into work. Now let's finish this last thing of the sock. Stop at 3 o'clock. Just before 3 o'clock. Your sock project yarn is now finished. Take your scissors and near your yarn source that I'm showing you there, cut your sock yarn and pull out your sock yarn from where you cut it at the source and just kind of fish it inside the machine. You need this length later, so maybe not all of it, but most of it to do your Kitchenering, your closing of your toe. So at this point, we're going to take some scrap yarn that's very different than what you see on the machine. Makes it way easier. Totally recommend that you use the same yarn diameter, scrap yarn, as your sock project yarn. Do not use anything like doily cotton here, because later when you try to manage those stitches, the tensions are going to be uneven and it makes it harder. Okay, so we added the red acrylic scrap yarn. We are threading the needles right after the 3 o'clock position to make sure no stitches drop. I'm just going to pinch it with my finger, make sure all the latches are open, and we are going to run a complete row. Perfect. Now I'm going to add stitch markers on either side of the hash marks. One on the left front of 9 o'clock, the left first needle stitch behind 9 o'clock, and the same at the 3 o'clock position. And why I mark both stitches on either side of the hash marks is those stitches are going to be the first ones on the right and the last ones on the left that I'm going to have to go through with my darting needle with scrap yarn, so those corner ones don't get lost in the mix, which often they can be by the time you get to the end. The fiber might tighten up and it might just hide those, and you certainly don't want to miss any live stitches, or you'll find out in the wash when they undo. By just taking the time, even for someone who's done as many socks, to do this, it's perfect fail safe. All right, so do as many rows as you wish. I feel that a good amount of scrap yarn is the best approach, less likely anything to undo. Might have done 10 rows there. As an example, I chose here to switch to doily cotton, which I refer to as spacer scrap, because the tension doesn't matter. It's a good way to kind of space out the projects so that they're in the right alignment. So here we are, that's what that is, and we're going to thread it in the machine. Do a couple rows. Actually, I tied it off at the source. You can do either way. Okay, so I'm pointing out the 3 o'clock position because at this point we're going to set up for our next sock. And that means swapping out certain needles. So we put the cylinder spring on the rest and switch the very first slot after 3 o'clock to an empty slot, and just transfer that stitch to its neighbor, and continuing over to have that repetition of an empty slot, 3 cylinder needles, empty slot, and work your way all the way around the machine. See, I do this on my spacer scrap because I feel it uses less scrap yarn to work a bit of scrap between the projects. My preference when I'm making multiple socks, one after the other, is actually not to place them very close to one another on the sock snake, as they say, because I want to make sure that I have even tension. And right now, if you are looking at that, you might see the heel weight is still needing to be pulled down to keep that side closest to me for even tension there. So right now, technically, if I immediately started another sock, the sock would be the weight that I was using plus the heel weights, not just the regular weights. And I feel that makes a difference in tension. You want to always have the same. So what I choose to do is I will work this stitch pattern just to set up for when it is time to start. But in the meantime, all of my needles are in the correct alignment. The cylinder spring was replaced, and I'm going to do a whole lot of rows of my spacer scrap so that I can easily add enough space with using less fiber that there'll be a tube instead of an uneven one with a toe that I can put the buckle on, and that way everything is completely even being pulled down, and I can remove the heel fork that I was using so to make the next sock with the exactly same weight. So what you can choose here, if you're about to start another sock, usually you would switch back to the same diameter scrap yarn. You would run your couple rows, and you would stop the yarn carrier at the slot just before 3 o'clock. So your next step, if you wanted to build your next sock, would to be add that Ravel cord once again. And then, of course, repeat all the instructions thus far. Thank you so much.